I've been fascinated with machine learning in games like chess and poker ever since I was a kid. But as a three-time Pokemon World Champion, I've always wondered, could AI ever surpass me in the game I excel at? Well, today we're going to take a look at a really interesting video by the third build, which will go into exactly that. Let's get started.
To master a game, you need a plan. And a good place to start is to find how many different places you might have to use it. For simple games, the number starts small, but as the games add pieces and places they can go, its amount of situations and its difficulty to master skyrockets. The further games are on this list, the closer making a computer that plays it at a human level comes to the limits of what we can build. But you know what we're here for. So where's Pokemon? Oh, wait a minute, that's not right. That number seems too small. Oh, okay, that's just for turn 1. That does make more sense. But if we had the graph show the number for every turn, well, this happens. Despite its worldwide popularity, surprisingly few people know that underneath the veil of a kid's game, Pokemon is one of the most complex two-player strategy games out there. And with this complexity, building a computer that can not only outplay humans, let alone those who've played competitively for over a decade, sounds impossible, right? I don't think so.
Wow, that was a sick intro. Yeah, I mean, I could not have put it any better there, where he mentions how Pokemon, despite being a kid's game, it's surprisingly complex. The number of different possibilities there are, whether it's actually building your team, whether it's, in-game battling itself. There's so many different potential outcomes and different things to consider that, as a human, we kind of do intuitively, but it's going to be really interesting to see, is it even possible to build an AI that can do this competently? My instinct would be no, but I'm definitely excited to see, just how good an AI can do against human players, so I guess we'll have to keep watching and find out.
Each turn, you choose one of 4 different moves, or switch between one of your 6 team members with the goal of bringing the health of your opponent's team to 0. Where the complexity comes into play is in what those move and switch options can do, and how many options you have for those options.
Yeah, so that's the beauty of Pokemon. There's so many different options, and even options within the options, right? Like, each Pokemon can learn so many different moves, but you only have room for 4. Now, granted, some of those moves that a Pokemon can learn are not even going to be usable competitively, but at the very least, most Pokemon have, 6, 8, 10 different viable moves at varying levels of usability. So not only is it, within the battle, which move exactly do you choose out of your 4 moves, but actually choosing those 4 moves themselves has so many different possibilities. So it's going to be interesting to see, how an AI is able to do when it comes to choosing not only the 4 moves to use on each Pokemon, but in the battle themselves, how is it going to decide which move to use in the right situation? So
let's take our 4 moves. Each can be one of 18 different types that come in their own web of strengths and weaknesses, and can do a combination of effects like doing damage, healing yourself, poisoning your target, changing the weather, and so much more. But before you can pick from any of those moves, you have to choose them from a list of about 40 useful ones each Mon can learn. Looking at this information alone, this Mon already has a total of almost 100,000 different ways you can use it.
Yeah, he mentions it right there, right? Each Pokemon can learn so many different moves. Now, not all of them will be useful, but, a good chunk of them will be. So for an AI to do the team building aspect of it, being able to choose which exact 4 moves are optimal, and then in the battle itself, being able to choose the right move for each situation sounds difficult, right? So, I'm a little bit skeptical, but, that's why I'm here watching this video. I'm excited to see, can this guy actually build an AI that does well against human players?
And again, that number only represents picking moves. If I explained all the options of choosing your team members, all of their stats, or even the stats of their stats, you'd start to see that number for how many ways a battle can start might feel like an understatement.
Yeah, so I alluded to this last time, but yeah, there's so many different things that go into Pokemon, right? Not only do you have the battle itself and making your decisions each turn within the battle, but then you have building the team itself, right? You have, I don't even know how many Pokemon there are nowadays. Have we passed the 1,000 mark? I don't even know, but there's so many different Pokemon to choose from. You can only pick 6. Then you have the moves for each Pokemon. They learn, you know, I don't know, 40, 50 plus moves, and you're choosing only 4. Then you have how to train them, what kind of stats you want your Pokemon to have, right? What nature do you give them? How do you EV train them? And then lastly, you've got the item, the held item. So you can change a lot about a Pokemon just through its item, whether you give it like a Choice Scarf to make it faster, give it a Life Orb for more damage, a Citrus Berry to make it bulkier, Assault Vest for the same reason. There's so many different ways that you can use each Pokemon that it makes it so there's almost an infinite number of possibilities, and that's kind of what I like the most about Pokemon. But that to me seems like it's also going to be the most challenging for an AI to be able to get right, you know, the team building aspect. I think in battling, that is one thing I am pretty optimistic. I think within the next 5 years, assuming there are a lot of people like this guy who are, you know, trying to make a good AI that can do better than humans, if there's a lot of work put into the development of machine learning for Pokemon, then I do think that AI could outperform humans in battling. When it comes to team building, though, that's where I'm a little more skeptical. I don't know if AI can really become better team builders than humans.
There are 3 major jobs that this AI must pull off to be effective. Number 1, understand whether it's winning. Number 2, predict how its choices will play out. And number 3, determine what it's not told about the opponent's team.
Yeah, I think these are going to be 3 really important factors for the machine learning to get right. When it comes to opponents' win percentage, as humans, we play differently based on how we assess our chances of winning to be on each particular turn, right? If we're losing, then we're going to make, you know, high risk, high reward plays because we're already losing, so we kind of have to make that kind of risky play in order to get back in the game. Whereas, you know, if we're winning or we assess ourselves to be in a position where we're winning, then we're going to play a lot safer and not make predictions that could cost us the game because we're already in a commanding spot. We're not going to want to play risky and potentially throw the game. When it comes to predicting opponents' moves, that's another area I think machine learning could do pretty well, based on figuring out opponents' patterns and how they've played, you know, leading up to that point in the battle. Then, you know, I think that's where machine learning is going to excel. And then lastly, predicting the opponent's team. Again, that's another scenario where machine learning does quite well. It's going to have information to every single Pokemon's usage stats. It's going to have information on every Pokemon's moves and its usage for its moves, abilities, items, nature, everything. When it comes to inverse damage calcs, right? When a move is used, the AI is going to be able to calculate a likely range for each Pokemon's stats. So that's another area where I think the AI is actually better than humans. So if you're able to nail this when it comes to programming your AI, then it could definitely, you know, do better than humans. I think, again, team building is going to be the hardest part for an AI to get right.
We're going to start with the one that this project only started because and could not be done without. This project only started because of my interest in the NBA. I noticed that websites would post a team's current chance of winning during games, and I wanted to know how they were making those predictions. So I figured that the best way to understand it was to try making my own. Once I got a little bit into that project, it occurred to me that a sporting event and a Pokemon battle couldn't be all that different from a data perspective.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm into sports too, so, you know, I'll see those live updated odds that each team has of winning in real time. And it's fascinating to me how they're able to do that. So I think I agree that there's really not that much different when it comes to, you know, programming, the math and what goes into building machine learning that's able to do that when it comes to Pokemon versus a sports game. So that's very interesting to me. Now, I will say at this point in the video, I am going to be cutting out a lot of the technical stuff that he does go into. So if you're a programmer, coder, or you're just into the technical stuff that goes into building, you know, AI or machine learning, definitely check out his video on his channel because he goes into this in depth. But me, I don't really understand it too much. You know, I'm not going to react to that. So I'm just going to keep plugging away at this video when it comes to the Pokemon part of it.
The reason machine learning is great for an application like this is once you have a machine learning model set up, it can sort out hard to solve problems for you. This works since you can give it a set of factors you think are part of the answer, The model can figure out how important each factor is or how to interpret them, and then it will give you an answer by using that importance to put those factors together. As a starting point, I decided that these were the attributes that could be useful in determining a player's likelihood of winning.
Okay, so that's interesting. He's got... Yeah, I mean, this is for singles, so while, maybe things like entry hazards are not going to be the most relevant, I think he's right that, those are going to be some of the major factors that the AI is going to need to assess how impactful are they in determining the state of the battle, right? And that's what makes it so interesting, because each one has, or should be, assigned a very different level of impact. And not only is that going to be a fixed level of impact, that's going to be static, right? For example, let's say there's a low health Snorlax because it just used Belly Drum, so it's got max attack. But if it's got low HP, if Trick Room's not up, then, it's super slow. So if you're in a situation where you can just threaten a KO on it, just because it has +6 attack, it's not threatening anything, right? So you can't assess, a high level of impact to that stat boost. So there's a lot of things, I think, for the AI to consider, and I think it is possible. It's just, right now, I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. I don't know if we're at the level where there's been enough, kind of development going on to try and build a good AI in Pokemon, but the more people that attempt doing this, I think we will get there within a relatively short period of time.
And in the end, I was able to create 3 models that represent the different aspects of what a player can do each turn with even greater accuracy than before.
Alright, so it looks like he's built his AI, and it's able to predict moves pretty well for each turn, predict whether, what move an opponent's going to use, whether it's switching in, switching out, whatever. And that's pretty good. Those were high levels of accuracy, right? It was in the high 80s, low 90s, which is really good. The question is going to be, once you're able to predict with a pretty high level of accuracy what the opponent's going to do, the AI then has to make the right move based on that information, right? In that, let's say, 15% chance that you get your prediction wrong, you need to be making a move that isn't just costing you the battle, right? Because there's a balance between making the move that takes the most advantage of your correct position, but you got to balance that out with making a move that if you get it wrong, then it's not just going to cost you the game.
The basic steps of this are figuring out what move options you and your opponent can choose, seeing what happens on all the different combinations of those move choices, and choosing the move that led to the most situations that were favorable to you.
Okay, so yeah, that's kind of my worry here, because from the sounds of it, it sounded like he wasn't taking into consideration the fact that if you get your prediction wrong, just how impactful is that on the state of the game, right? It's not just about choosing the move that gives you the best positive result, but it's also about minimizing the worst results, right? If you get your prediction wrong. So
this chart for the turns that result from the move combinations of both players is already a best case scenario, assuming you know everything your opponent can do, which won't happen all that often. So if you want to cover all their possible moves, the opponent's side of this graph gets much larger. What this chart also assumes is every move always happens the same way. But in reality, a ton of moves have a chance to miss, or burn its target, or just other random side effects, and each one of those creates another turn to consider. And don't forget, all these situations are just for one turn, and to look into future turns, you'd have to explore at least this many options for all the turns that branch off from this first one.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? That each move, well, not all moves, but a lot of moves have secondary effects, whether it's flinching, freezing, burning, etc. And then you're not just looking at the impact on one turn, you have to look at the impact multiple turns from now. In a way, kind of like chess, but that is kind of why I think, again, AI and machine learning in Pokemon is going to be, I think, most impactful in the actual battles, right? That is an area where I think machine learning does excel a lot and can even surpass humans. So it is good that, he does mention that, how there are so many different outcomes, and this is kind of what machine learning is set up to excel at. So
there are still some pretty big gaps in this logic, and 2 fundamental parts still holding it back. Now the first of the 2, and this is truly a topic onto itself that I'll have to save for later, is that the AI builds its own teams. In short, it does so by trying to build a well-rounded team that counters the Pokemon it thinks it will see more often, while also not being countered itself. And for right now, I have it playing really safe. Like, it could pick whatever Pokemon it wants, but their sets don't really deviate that far off of what's standard, since I'd rather just have all its teams be fine rather than risk making any bad ones.
Yeah, that's, again, this is going to be the hardest part to get right when it comes to building an AI. The team building aspect is just so difficult that it's really going to be hard to program an AI, even with the advantage of machine learning, to be able to excel at. There are some things I think it is really good at, potentially better than humans. The first being the data that it has, right? It's going to know the exact usage stats at every exact moment of time of every single Pokemon, their moves, their ability, their held item, everything, right? So being able to build a team that does well against the expected metagame is going to be one of its strengths. And so maybe this is a scenario where it could take, I mean, I don't know, maybe it never happens, but if it does happen, maybe 10 years, who knows, right, for an AI to become better at team building than humans. But I think there's still a lot that humans could take from, AI building teams, assuming that the AI is at a high enough level, right? Humans could maybe they're underlooking potential anti-meta threats, right? And the AI figures it out. So I think while AI won't completely surpass humans in team building, I don't think. I do think there's a lot that humans can gain from having a really good AI building teams.
Now, the second part is a little bit more complicated. Since I knew the AI would be playing against people in a bunch of different skill levels while trying to raise its own rating, I had to program in a way to make it play differently against those of different rank, because you can't approach different player levels at the same way and expect to win.
Yeah, this is true, actually. It's really interesting, though. I'll explain, right? So on Showdown, you have your opponent's ranking right there for you, so you know just how good your opponent is. And it does matter because you do play differently against different ratings. If somebody is a lower rating, then you're going to start out playing a lot safer, where if it's somebody, really high rated, you might make some bolder predictions going up against them because you know that they're going to be a higher level player. The thing is, in official Pokemon tournament play, I never tell people to, play to the level that they expect their opponent to play at, because you never know. That's the thing. You don't have a rating just given to you at the start of the match in official tournaments. You can't even go based on CP because it could be a really good player. They just haven't gone to enough tournaments to accumulate enough CP. Somebody could have a ton of CP, but it could just be because they've gone to so many different tournaments. So I personally will start off each match playing a little bit safer until I get a feel for my opponent's skill level. But on Showdown, right, you're just given your opponent's skill level right off the bat. So again, AI is not going to be going to in-person tournaments, but so it doesn't really matter. But it's just one thing that is interesting, in my opinion, to consider, because there's a bit of a dichotomy between how you should play in person versus online when it comes to this.
When you click a damaging move in Pokemon, the amount of damage done is determined by this equation, with the main components being the power of the move, the user's attack and level, and its target's defenses. We only run inverse damage calculation once the damage has already been done, so we can rearrange the equation to find the attack stat which caused this damage. Since the game tells us our opponent's level, we know our own defense stat, and the power of the move that hit us can be looked up. There's only one more number we need to correctly find their attack stat. However, that number is where things get complicated. It represents the general damage modifier, which is a product of potentially dozens of known and unknown effects happening during a battle, which can change how much damage a move can do. And the two effects that can have the greatest difference, yet we have the least likelihood of knowing, are from the item the attacker is holding or their special ability.
Yeah, so this is really interesting to me because damage calculations in Pokemon, they give you a range of damage. So you can never get the exact stat that your opponent's Pokemon have from this. With that said, you can get a range, which should be good enough. And this is something that the AI is always going to be better at than humans, right? The fact that they can just do math like that, right? Just do that whole formula And not only that, but they have access, the AI is going to know the usage stats of every single item ability for each Pokemon, so it can get a higher level of accuracy when it comes to that inverse damage calc. Whereas humans, we have to do this by intuition. We play so many games of practice that we're just able to intuitively kind of figure out how an opposing Pokemon is trained, but we don't know exactly how, especially because it is a range, damage in Pokemon, it is a range, so we're never going to know for sure just how each opponent's Pokemon is trained, but the AI can get a much finer range, a much more accurate range than we as humans can, and to me that's really interesting. And again, that comes back to what I said before, that I think AI is going to be superior to humans when it comes to actually battling.
Let's talk about how it did. As I'm recording this is the rating of Player 500. So now for the AI. So the AI's average rating was 1547, and its maximum rating was 1630. That average rating puts it in the top 10% of all players, and that maximum rating puts it above the top 5% of all players.
All right, so we finally get to see how the AI actually did against human opponents, and it did pretty well, right? Top 5% at its peak. When you look at it in an official Pokemon tournament context on the VGC side, I think that is qualifying for Worlds level, if I'm not mistaken, or it's close enough. So that's really good, actually. But as I said before, it is exclusively on the single battle side, whereas the official Pokemon tournaments, of course, use double battles, which have a lot more potential outcomes for each turn than single battles have. So it is a lot tougher, not only from the battling perspective, which I don't think the AI would actually struggle with. It would just need a few tweaks to update for double battles. But the team building aspect as well is a little different on the double side, because as humans, we've kind of, internalized how to build teams in doubles, because you have to factor in how each of your 6 Pokemon would fare if it were partnered with one of your other Pokemon at the same time, whereas we don't really have formulas or math equations to kind of give to an AI to make it be able to team build as well as us in doubles. But overall, machine learning to me is really fascinating, especially when you guys hit the subscribe button down below for the YouTube algorithm. But that's going to be it for me. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time.